Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to The Lookout. Today's the 3rd of September. We're going to take a look at active fires in Northern California and Oregon. My name is Zeke Lunder. We run this website called The Lookout here in Chico, California. And I've been working in fire and mapping since about 1999. I'm a mapping specialist and wildfire analyst. And I'm not assigned to any of these fires I'm covering. The Lookout's an independent media venture. And we take publicly available fire intelligence and interpret it and talk to you about what we see. So we're not official fire information. Sometimes this data we get is preliminary. Sometimes there's errors in it. But we try to share the best available information that we can get a hold of and help people understand what's happening with wildfires. We focus on Northern California, where I'm from. But we'll reach out into other areas if we think there's something interesting. Really what we want to do is help people understand how wildfire works and to develop their kind of literacy around it, because it's such a complicated issue and it's such a pressing topic now for so many of us. So our goal with all these broadcasts is to help you understand how fires are fought, the limitations, what firefighters are up against, the kind of internal structural problems in firefighting, the stuff that you can't really get from talking to a firefighter who has to worry about a public information officer not liking what they have to say. We're going to start off here. We're going to cover 4 fires today. And I know it's a little bit tedious if you're waiting for information on your fire, but it's kind of the way I have to do it right now, just because of we're still figuring out this live stream stuff, so we'll try not to linger right on each one. But we're going to start off with really the wildest one from yesterday, which is the mill fire in Weed. We're going to start right off by looking at Lake Shastina, because that's kind of where the fire ended up. We're looking here to the kind of northeast over Jackson Ranch Road. And the fire kind of, luckily the winds kind of cooperated. The fire hit the lake, the fire hit the golf course. There's been fuel treatment done out here in some places. So it burned out to this kind of tip of Rainbow Drive. It burned a section of Cottonwood Drive up to Palmer. It burned here out to Muskrat Road, Fisher Road, and it kind of hung up here. So there's structure losses in this affected area, but this mapping is as of about 8 p.m. last night. This fire was pretty wild to watch, and it kind of went all over the place. And I don't know, I don't have, this is mapping of the heat from 8 p.m., so I really don't, it's kind of a strange shape to me, and I think that the fire definitely filled in some of this. This is just what I've got to work with from the heat airplane. So we're just kind of coming south here. The Weed Airport is over here. And overnight, the fire was kind of still actively burning out in here. Like we said yesterday, we expected that there would be some spread here, because resources are focused often on structure protection in the areas that are the densest. So overnight, the fire backed a bit here, but it didn't spread a lot. There was a huge amount of helicopter work done on this part of the fire. Portions of the fire yesterday were they're too smoky for aircraft. And so a lot of work got done here by helicopters, and that really checked up this part of the spread. In blue here, we have the Bulls fire from 2014, just to show like how similar the two are in their orientation. The Bulls fire started on the south end of Weed, and it went right through, burned a lot of homes. But that's just there for comparison. This fire started at the mill site. That's why they call it the mill fire. And huge building fire. I'll have a video of that in a minute. Went straight into this neighborhood, burned almost every house in this neighborhood. Jumped over here, burned a ton of homes here, and just was spread immediately by long-range spotting. So, this huge fire throwing spots out, a mile probably, jump-started the fire. Another thing we see a lot in this kind of landscape is when you've got winds that are kind of hugging the surface, is they blast a fire up a hill like this, where it's directly exposed to the wind, and then it lofts embers off the top of the hill. So that is just this kind of demo, we call it, devil's hopscotch or something, where you immediately have fires that really move. So like we said, there will be improved mapping as as CAL FIRE moves out of pure response mode and into management mode. And this is a strange shape to me, but this is just what I got from the infrared plane it was flying. I'm going to jump here quick to a video from Darren Quigley's Facebook page. Actually, this is not his. Darren Quigley's, he's retired fire chief from Siskiyou County, and he has some thoughts on the fire on his Facebook. If you're on there, check out Darren Quigley. This is the mill fire early on, and you can see already there's spots out here taking off. But definitely just this crazy building fire that spread enormously fast, and that all over the place. Yeah, so there's the mill right there. Lofting spots out in here, fires off to the races. So this fire hasn't spread much in the last 12 hours, and a lot of this country is a quick place to pick up a fire, good access, low fuels, and so don't expect a lot of new movement on this fire. If you're affected, really sorry you lost your house. Sorry if you're evacuated. It's such a wild place. I've heard that, I don't know if it's true or not, but I've heard that one of the reasons that the town of Weed got built where it was for sawmills and everything was because the dry wind here helped dry lumber quickly. So we see, patterns in the landscape, and we should know that, we should expect that we'll keep having fires here. We have a lot of people. We have dry fuels. We have steady summer winds that come at the hottest part of the year. And, if we're rebuilding homes in here, we should be building them in a different way. We got to think about building stick frame houses in dry forest where we have frequent fire. We got to, there's fire safe building code, and to me, it doesn't mean anything. It's not enough. We got to be thinking more radically about what it means here to. Sorry, I got some weird audio going on. But yeah, I got to think about what it really means to have a fire-safe building in a landscape that really is just gives you such intense fire. To me, that sounds like more concrete and steel and digging in. But yeah, we can't just throw some hardy backer on a stick frame house and think that everything's going to be good. Okay, so just as this was going, just kind of within sight, we got another big fire that took off. So we're looking north here, up I-5, and we're kind of looking over now towards, here's Wairika, and here's Fort Jones and Scott Valley. So yesterday in the afternoon, as the mill fire was blowing up, this mountain fire took off down here on the Gazelle Callahan Road, and it got blown by the same kind of southerly winds. And by 5 o'clock this morning, it's almost 3,500 acres. Similar to the McKinney fire, this landscape hasn't had fire history in a long time. On the McKinney, we'd had fire history in the 1950s. There's no recorded fire history in this area, kind of this island of forest between Fort Jones and Scott Valley and Shasta Valley. This land is kind of primed for it. One of the problems in general we've got in this corner of the state, and just all over the Sierra really, is we've logged all the biggest trees off this land for the last 120 years or more. And so the forests that we have left are kind of crowded, spindly, small trees. And so this yellow out here is kind of the footprint of private land in private timberland in northeastern California. And we've talked about checkerboard before. So to checkerboard here is the land ownership pattern where when they built the railroad down from Oregon down I-5, they gave every other section to the railroads. And then that became like Southern Pacific Land Holding Company. And then at some point, a lot of this land was Sierra Pacific Industries or Roseburg. And it's gone through many different ownerships. But in general, what it means is we've got this kind of schizophrenic land management where the private land gets managed one way, the adjacent sections of public land, Forest Service, get managed a different way. And it's really hard to look at this landscape and think in kind of a cohesive, big picture view of how you would manage it. You know, if the Forest Service wants to do a big prescribed burn, which they don't really want to because that's a different story. It's hard to manage this checkerboard landscape, basically, because you've got really competing values between the private timber landowners and the public land. So this ownership out here is kind of part of that legacy of, and some of it's been kind of consolidated into bigger chunks, but it's got the same kind of management history as the McKinney Fire, where you've just got, we've taken all the big trees off the landscape for a long time. And so what we're left with is young stands or kind of thickets of old trees that are small and suppressed. So it's kind of a setup for new fires to behave in ways that we don't like the McKinney Fire. Right? We have this hot, dry landscape that's lacking shade, and it's lacking the big fire-resistant trees that may have been here 100 years ago. So it's especially when it's so hot and dry, we've got real problems with spotting anywhere on this landscape, and it's just a fire that's driven by weather and wind and spotting is really hard for us to control. So kind of right off the bat, we look at this fire and we step back and look at what our control options are. You start looking out to ridges, big ridges, roads, valley bottom. And the problem is that, in the past, under more mild weather, we'd get a lot of work done at night with hotshot crews, and we could get a lot of good direct firefighting done at night. I mean, the fact that this fire grew like 1,500, 2,000 acres between 8 p.m. and 5 a.m. tells you something. It tells you that it was moving right out as spotting at night. And, the reason that we used to be able to go direct at night in the past oftentimes is because we had a lot less spotting. And, you just can't cut direct hand line and chase spots at the same time. Like, there's kind of a rule of thumb with firefighting that if you're spending more time chasing spots than you are producing fire line, you need to change tactics because you've lost it. So, in the big picture, the McKinney Fire that burned 50,000 acres in, 2 burning periods kind of is a cautionary tale for the fuels potential this year in this kind of landscape. The one thing that this fire has going for it compared to McKinney is it's already kind of on the top of the hill. So McKinney had started down by the river and had a whole series of watersheds to run. This fire is kind of already on top of the mountain. So that does buy some advantage. The fire can't just run wild. It'd be a different story if this fire right now was burning down here at the mouth of this canyon with getting ready for some north winds. It was going to take out this whole watershed. But either way, it'll be interesting to see where the box gets drawn for this. There's a lot of talk about CAL FIRE versus the Forest Service and their tactics, and CAL FIRE being more game to go direct, and Forest Service often stepping back and doing a big box. Pretty sure this is a CAL FIRE fire, and so it will be interesting to see how their tactics hold up, and just how we can get at this in the next few days with this super hot and dry weather. So there's Gazelle. Over here is Etna, Callahan, and that's the mountain fire. All right, and spoiler alert, there's not a lot going on the Six Rivers fire, so if you're waiting to see whether or not it escaped or caused any big problems, it didn't. So we're going to skip up to the Rum Creek fire now. We're going to fly up over the McKinney Fire here that's not on the map, but should be. McKinney just burned this whole this whole side of the mountain, about 60,000 acres. Okay, we're flying into Oregon here, and in Oregon I've got fire history turned on. Blue is fires in the last 10 years in Oregon. So coming down here, we've got Grants Pass, Merlin, Galice, the Rogue River's going out this way towards the coast. We've been covering this fire for a few days. Fire is generally behaving itself. Yesterday there was a red flag warning for a frontal passage, super dry. They're worried about winds. What we've got here in blue is a fire from 2018, and Dozer line from that fire in black. And as we've talked about on this channel, is just that in forests, recent burn scars do sometimes buy you some advantage for a little while before they get kind of brushed in and full of slash and everything else from the trees that were killed. Anyway, white lines on our maps generally show 24-hour increments of fire spread. So we'll take yesterday's perimeter and throw it on there in white just so you can kind of see what the fire's done here in the last 3 days. And where you've got white line on the edge, it means that the fire hasn't moved. So what we've been worried about here on Rum Fire is the east side of the fire that could blow out and kind of threaten to come out to the front country here to Hugo and down here to Merlin. And that really hasn't happened. We've been watching this corner. They've fired off some roads here, and there's still scattered heat, but there's no spread really for the last 2 days on this portion of the fire. There's a teeny bit showing down in this little gully here, but this is all cool. Last couple days, all the way up to here, and then we get up on top of Stratton Creek. There's still a little spread here, but just a little down in the head of this gully. Everything else held through yesterday. Kind of the tough part of the fire we've been watching is just the head of, not sure if this is McNabe Creek, but there's still active fire spread out in here, like a quarter to half a mile of fire backing down in this canyon. They've kind of tied in here parts of it, but there's minor spread in this area. And as we've discussed, just the terrain creates opportunities for dozer line and roads, etc. And there's not great terrain opportunities out here to control this backside of the fire. So this is one of the few spots on Rum Creek that's continued to spread. And we talked a little about how it was kind of tucked in. Some of these spots where they were worried about northwest wind, and we were kind of tucked in behind these ridges. So you can see some little kind of wind-driven runs here in the last 24 hours, but they're not really aligned with a lot of slope. Here on this kind of north edge, they had done some firing down the hand line and dozer line here, and this looks tied in here to lines that we can't see. This fire, I'm not getting fire line data from them. Some teams upload their fire line data to a public website. This team's not doing that, and so I can't really show their fire line, but it looks like pretty much continuing the firing from the day before. This corner's tied in. As part of the fire on the north flank, here's Rainy Falls Trail. It's been cold for over a week, and then it came out and it pooched over Rum Creek here. And so this has been actively spreading. And so we've talked about on this fire, there was a kind of a huge air tanker battle to hold this flank, and it did for almost a week. They dumped a ton of retardant on this east fork of Rum Creek. But as we kind of have been expecting, it blew out of there. There was a spot out here that's grown. And so the team here has been building this box with dozer line and firing it. And we talked a bit about their options kind of for direct versus indirect attack here. They had this major mid-slope road system, but we had been talking about how mid-slope roads aren't usually a very good option for holding fires. So their firing show continues. Their challenge here is just they've got to keep a pace of this, but this is kind of run out of slope, this coming out of Rum Creek. And so they're not in a position where the fire's pushing real hard. The terrain and winds and everything aren't a threat necessarily right off the bat to them getting this firing operation done. But they've got to keep pace on their firing out through here with the spread of the fire that's below them. So that's kind of the big picture strategy on Rum Creek. Let's turn around so you can look at that with north up. So we kind of started talking about this, a week ago. It's like, hey, they got this old dozer line. They're probably going to use that and come out this ridge. Anyway, and we talked also about how, BLM has managed a lot of this checkerboard land in Oregon. If you thought California had a lot of checkerboard, Western Oregon has a ton of checkerboard, and BLM manages every other section, Bureau of Land Management, and they're mandated by Congress to maintain timber yields there to pay for schools and other expenses of the public in Oregon, which is kind of a way of marrying logging to public services. So they've in the past done some clear cuts out in here that now are going to burn up in this fire. Okay, that's about it for Rum Creek. Things are looking pretty good all in all. They're plodding through. I'm not sure out here what the strategy is. Let's take a look real quick on their ops map. So here's, just to kind of recap, here's Galice. They're calling this black here, and they've got to tie that into the firing on that old dozer line. And then here's their firing heading out this dozer line, and then it turns into hand line. It drops down to the Rogue River. Over here, they're showing the hand line and dozer line where I said I didn't have their data. When I say I don't have their data, it means I can get these maps here that you're looking at, but I don't have their lines as a GIS file, so I can't really bring them into my Google Earth show. So it looks like out here we're talking about how they haven't had access on that northeast flank. They've got road prepped as line, dozer line, more road, and so they're kind of having to come down across that drainage and up to the ridge. Don't know what's going to happen in here. It's kind of they've got more detailed maps, but I didn't have time to pull them up. Anyway, that's how you read these maps. H is hand line, R is road prepped as line. These X's are dozer line, red is open fire line. They're finally calling the stretch along the river contained. All right. Let's jump down to Six Rivers. All right, flying south. There's Crescent City. There we go. A bunch of stuff down here. All right, Six Rivers Lightning Complex started as a bunch of different fires. Some of them burned together and became two large fires. There's been this big kind of wild indirect firefighting operation going on here where they've backed off and fired off ridges and roads and generally contained the fire. It's burned a lot. There's going to be a lot to talk about here with fire effects, and we've got a lot of videos on that. If you're interested in it, go back and check out our videos from the last 2 weeks on this fire, and it kind of tells a chronology of how this has unfolded. The big news here lately has just been that this fire spotted over the ridge here towards Trinity Village, and the last couple of days it's been backing down. There's no new movement in the last 24 hours showing on the mapping. It looks like they're holding it here above Trinity Village. The day before that, it was up here. The day before that, it was up on top. So no news to report there. Someone asked the other day, hey, what's up with these spot fires? How come you didn't talk about those? Those are contained about 10 days ago. So the fire kind of had pushed up out of here. They were firing here. Slopped over. They got handline around it. So nothing going on there. No new heat showing here, just scattered heat and no new movement. As we talked about other places, this is a 2021 fire. This is a 2015 fire. This is a 2020 fire. So in a lot of ways, we don't expect a 7-year-old burn to stop a fire, but we also I often feel like a 7-year-old burn getting another burn when they were both started by lightning is like, it's probably going to be a good thing to reburn a forest that burned in this kind of natural interval. These fires they kind of reset the fire clock. It's hard when you've got land that hasn't burned for 100 years and it burns. When you've got land that burned 5 years ago and it burns again, you're getting oftentimes closer to what its natural treatment. What's not natural is if we keep fire out of this burn for the next 20 years and it burns again, then we're going to have all the dead wood from this fire to ruin what's left of the forest. So these fires create opportunities for us to get more fire in there in the near future, and then that opportunity goes away and we've got a problem that's worse. So we have to be thinking about, why would we be fighting so hard to keep this fire out of this 2015 fire. What's out there that we really think is going to be better off because we put fire on the ground? Anyway, we've been talking about that for weeks, so if you want to go down that rabbit hole, check out our earlier videos. All right, I'm going to check out some comments here, and I wanted to share some websites, and I'm needing to work on a links page for our website because I've been dumping links into these live streams and then the comments go away. So real quick, here's our website. It's the Lookout, thelookout.org. And we've got a feature up there right now about yesterday's fire and the mill fire. And this photo is from Tracy Miner. If we don't have her name credited, we'll credit it. Anyway, you can go and look at our page. We've got a bunch of our recent videos. We've got a transcription of a kind of a long video I did about forestry 2 days ago. And then we've got these subjects over here that are land management, logging, McKinney Fire, mill fire, Native Americans, people, photography. And so we're just, we've been putting a lot of our content here. The YouTube thing's kind of new, and it's kind of been taking most of my energy right now. But last year we did a ton of writing on the Dixie Fire, the Caldor Fire. We're doing interviews. So the Lookout is kind of, the website is where a lot of our work ends up. Also Twitter, wildland_ZKO is my Twitter handle. And if I don't have a big update, I'll throw stuff on Twitter. So I wanted to share a couple things, a couple places I go for intel. The College of DuPage has some nice kind of fast loading satellite animations. Those are handy for seeing smoke, and they also show at night, they show the heat of the fires, infrared. So you can see like this fire in Oregon, the Cedar Creek fire blew up. You can see also like overnight, you can see the mountain fire here staying active. So I use that one. It's got kind of regional views. I like it. I use wildfireintel.org a lot. It's a great site for kind of real-time updates from people who know a lot about fire. A lot of retired firefighters are listening to online scanners or passing on stuff they're hearing from their friends. It's divided by region, and so, but it shows you kind of the latest info. And so during active fire, like yesterday, during the mill fire, there was 102 comments in the course of like 10 hours. This Fire Mapper site is pretty good. This is kind of crowdsourced information, and they gather a lot of good intel. So like the perimeters that I get, they throw those in there. They also have these little kind of heat dots. So it's a good site. With these heat dots, we've got to be careful because like on this fire, the heat satellite's picking up all this fire way out in here. And you have to take that stuff with a grain of salt. Sometimes it means there's heat there. Sometimes it means that the satellite that went over here was like way out in like Utah. And at that angle, the heat in the column can fool the sensor. But all in all, this is, oftentimes it's the best intel we have is the heat satellites. I also like windy.com, which is a forecasting site. And so you can drop a point and then hit an animation here, and it'll tell you like, through the day what the wind's going to do. It goes out, up to a week or something. You can pick different forecast models if you want to do that research. Some models are better than others for different places and different reasons. And I'm not really a weatherman, so I can't tell you what. But it's useful for seeing what's going to happen. Caltopo is another site that's great, caltopo.com, where you can turn on all these layers. It's kind of like, I do what's called GIS mapping, Geographic Information Systems. And this is kind of like web-based GIS where you don't have to track down all the data. It's all in one place. So like, here's the McKinney Fire. They may or may not have our fires up yet with, see they don't have the recent fire up yet. But what they do have that was useful for me yesterday is like, if you pay them the extra like $20 a year, you can turn on parcels and you can see structures. So like when we're first on a fire, trying to figure out what's going on, this is handy because we can see where structure density is, where homes are. You can turn on and off different layers, and then when you make your map, you can export it and you can share it with other people via like PDF. So Caltopa is great, good site. I use Flight Radar to see where airplanes are, and during the fire you can really see the tankers and everything else. So we're going to be working on building a links page for the Lookout, and we can send you there to get the same intel we get. I'm going to jump off here into comments and just we'll wrap it up here. Okay, someone says it's breezy indoors right now on the border, which makes me think it'll be windy day again. A lot of tankers cruising over doors late yesterday. Mark Sorensen says stucco and metal roofs. Someone says they're there in Weed when it started, about 100 feet away from the mill. Maybe the mill or the Pacific Power substation. Also, there's a man walking at the tracks 10 minutes before it started. Someone else says they're really remote mountains on the east side of Scott Valley. And someone says, how's the Lake Shastina golf neighborhood? Let's just jump back there real quick. Where am I going? Lost. Okay, there's Shasta. Yeah, so if you're just joining us, back to the mill fire here. Here's where it was last night, about 8 p.m. I don't think it spread much after that. And I need to turn the roads on, maybe. All right. Sorry. Here you go. Dwinell, Cottonwood. Is Hogan out here? Didn't get the Hogan. Here's Fisher. Here's Muskrat. It also fingered through some places and didn't get the houses. Here's Antelope Place and Antelope Way. Jackson Ranch Road across the bottom here. Someone's asking, when you say the fire is CAL FIRE's, what does that mean? How do they decide who's who? There's maps. There's what we have called state responsibility area and federal response area, and then so that decides who pays for firefighting on a specific piece of ground. And then there's what's called direct protection areas, and so some places CAL FIRE has more stations than the Forest Service, so CAL FIRE fire engines and resources will protect Forest Service land, and other places, say like Plumas County, there's more Forest Service stations and firefighters than CAL FIRE. So even though there's private timberland in there that the state pays for firefighting on, if you call 911, they'll send federal fire engines. So when I say it's a CAL FIRE fire, it means that it's in a place that CAL FIRE responds to, meaning that if they order an incident management team, it's going to be a CAL FIRE incident management team. Even though there might be National Forest in that area, there's it's going to be CAL FIRE incident commander. And then oftentimes they'll add a Forest Service incident commander and say it's Joint Command. So pretty sure this fire here is in what we call the state responsibility area. And that's kind of a function of the land ownership. So when we turn on our forest landowner layer, we've got a bunch of yellow out here. Yellow is land that CAL FIRE is in charge of protecting. CAL FIRE's big charter, and for years and years, CAL FIRE's main job was to protect timberland from fires starting in the communities. And now that we've got communities built everywhere, now CAL FIRE's job is to protect communities from forest fires. But in the past, they were supposed to go put out house fires because they were going to burn up the timber, and CAL FIRE mainly worked for the timber companies. that's changed over the last 50 years. Now CAL FIRE is more focused on protecting structures from forest fires. Anyway, this yellow land is all private timberland, and so we'll get a CAL FIRE incident command team on this fire. Someone said, do you know if confusion about whose fire it was had something to do with the delayed response to the Caldor? I don't know. All right, there's another question, so I'm going to jump off. We usually do these every morning. If something extraordinary is happening, like what happened yesterday, we'll jump in the middle of the day. But that's our main focus is morning reports. And there's other people on Twitter, et cetera, that are really good at kind of breaking news, and it's hard for me to kind of stay on top of the breaking news side of things. I've got a full-time job and 2 little kids, so I'll jump in when I can. But that live streaming during active homes burning is kind of not my jam. So feel for everyone who lost their house. Hopefully our information helps you if you're evacuated and see that your house didn't burn. And if your house did burn, sorry. Wish you the best.